God!
Welcome. I don't know why I did that.
Welcome to the Brie Hubble Jazz Hour.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Kitchen and Jorn show. You might be like, where's Jorn? Jorn is doing sound right now.
Yeah, what up?
So today we are actually doing a very special video. People have asked for this video for a while. I was kind of reluctant to do it because it kind of involves talking about some very personal things and I don't owe anyone, neither do you. But honestly, I think it's helpful. I don't know. Maybe this isn't helpful. Maybe this is great. Who knows? Who knows what kind of video we're about to make? We wanted to make a video about how our relationship has sort of
Grown and evolved in the last 3 years.
yeah, since Brie's transition. Because a lot of people have been asking that. And at first I was like, that seems like a very personal question. And then I was like, well, I mean, I bet that there are other people right now who are like, wow, I wish I had a video talking about this stuff. Because wow, I wish I'd had a video. I don't know, we should probably just get into it.
Yeah. So here's the thing about when I was coming out. When I was first starting to have those feelings, a lot of it was because I had been not in a good place. I was, kind of rock bottom in terms of dealing with my mental health. I had really neglected it in a way that was a coping mechanism, really. In a way that was me trying to not think about my gender, me trying to act masculine in a way that was not healthy for me, wasn't healthy for the people around me. It wasn't good. And I was just getting to a place where I was kind of crawling out of some of those coping mechanisms, but not really acknowledging the root cause. I started having these feelings that there was something up. I'm realizing now that there is a problem beneath the symptom. I need to address it, and I can't do that alone. I'm married, and I'm married to someone that I love desperately, that is the most important person in my life, and that I want to share my life with and everything about my life with. So I can't do this alone. I need to do it with Kristen, is my instinct. Yeah, pretty gay.
Pretty gay.
But yeah, so I had done some reading, some research about gender, about transition, about transitioning. I was, in like many an egg, following many trans women on Twitter because I just thought they were neat. An egg is common parlance for a trans person who has yet to self-realize.
So to crack the egg is to come out to yourself.
Yes.
You kind of wish you were part of them, and you
Yeah.
you wish you were like, wow, it'd be cool to be you did a lot of it'd be so cool to be a trans woman. As I tell people, if you really want to be a gender, congratulations.
You are.
You are that gender.
Yeah. Those were the feelings that I kind of unearthed with good medication and slightly better, though still not sufficient therapy. So I went to Kristen on the best possible day I could have done it.
I was so stressed. I was about to film a pilot that I've been planning for months. Basically, it was the most important thing that I'd done so far at BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
It was the night before we were leaving, and I remember being
So pissed.
very pissed. I remember being you need to work on your timing.
In retrospect, I could have timed that better. I could have left you a text message while you were on the flight. I could have come with you and said it right before you went to dinner.
There are many ways you could have just taken a dump on that whole shoot.
Yeah. Could have hidden a note in your suitcase. But then it wouldn't have been empty, so.
You were talking about being non-binary. I didn't believe you. I thought you were a trans woman. And not that non-binary people don't exist. They absolutely do. It's just that I did not believe this particular person was a non-binary person. And I was right. Again, I lived with this person. I know this person very well. For me, it was everything sort of slotted into place. And I was like, Brie is a trans woman. Because I realized oh, this makes complete sense.
And in my heart of hearts, that's where I wanted to go. But I didn't feel like I could. I didn't feel like it was, I kind of didn't feel like it was safe for me to do that whilst still maintaining a relationship that I was putting a huge premium on.
In the very beginnings of this, when this journey was starting, one of the first things I did was I researched, what do you do when your spouse comes out as trans? I wanted to hear what other people had done. And we'll talk a lot about what you get when you do that Google search in a second. But I will say the piece of advice that stuck with me the most was to not process their feelings with their trans spouse. Basically, the advice was you need to make sure to dump out and support the trans spouse, and don't share those negative feelings in the context of the marriage. And I can tell you, from years of experience, absolutely, that advice is dog shit. That is the worst advice that you could possibly give someone. I want to go back in time and rip the phone out of my hands. This advice will destroy your marriage.
It is a good thing to keep in mind, like how you are processing things with your trans partner. But processing things separate from your partner, trans or cis, is generally not good.
Basically, what you don't want to do is process at someone. You don't want to like just be like, I'm just going to tell you any old crazy thing and come into my head and vomit, goodbye. Processing with someone is when you do it like in a very safe environment, like in a couples therapist. You like rehearse it. I took this advice that I should process entirely outside the context of my marriage. I took it as a thing that I absolutely had to do, and it was a mistake.
And it led to me feeling like anything I was doing was creating a wedge between us.
Yes. A marriage can't be about one person.
It can't. Not even when that person's Kristen.
A marriage is like, I think, the one context in which it truly is happening to both of you. And it took me a really long time to be okay with feeling that way. I spent years being like, well, I just need to put all these feelings in a box and process them elsewhere and then not talk about them ever.
Yeah, which was, again, not great, because I could tell that you were doing that. I could tell there were things that you were keeping from me, and there were things I wanted to process, but like I felt like I couldn't process with you when you were not processing with me.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's based on good instincts. The instincts are sound. It's just practically, it is advice that like I tried to hew to so closely that it truly did eat away at our marriage. And that's why I say it's dog shit, because like it's not good advice. Because the truth is that like you are gonna have difficult feelings and you do have to talk about those difficult feelings. This isn't like your friend or like your sibling or your child or your parent. It's like someone you're literally in a romantic relationship with who shares your life. And it's like, you have to. It's not realistic. When you look up what to do when your spouse comes out as trans, you get like two distinctly different things. There are some people who, when it happens, it's like friction free. It's like it's fine. It's whatever. Like it's exciting. It's like big warm feelings. Like, you know, and that happens. That absolutely happens. And then there's this like large storm cloud of other people who say the violent stuff that are just like, I have been widowed.
That are just resentful and hurt.
Those are kind of, when you Google what to do when your spouse comes out as trans, those are sort of the two viewpoints you get. No. It's just not practical. Like, because it's just like my choices are everything's fine or violence.
There's not a lot of literature on it. There aren't a lot of experiences, people sharing experiences about it, because it is work. Yeah. It's not going to happen super frictionlessly.
I think that thus began, like kind of a 2-year era of like very push and pull, where you sort of asserted that you were non-binary while very trying to transition in every way except saying what it was and doing it medically. And so I would get increasingly frustrated with you because I was just like, just say you're a trans woman.
And I would be like, no, because if I do that, the world will end. And by world will end, I mean this relationship.
And so I kind of was torn between my intuition, which is that Brie is a trans woman, and believing Brie, which honestly kind of required me to like shut off my eyes, ears, and feelings. I can't explain it. It's really difficult. It's just when you live with someone and you know someone very well, you can tell when they're telling a very extended lie. Through that whole time, every time you would take a further step that would like kind of get you closer to transitioning, and at the time my therapist actually brought this up to me. And she was like, Kristen, every time we talk about this, Brie's doing something new. That's like her transitioning. And I was like, I know, but she says that she's just non-binary. And my therapist was just like, okay, but like she's making progress and it doesn't seem to be abating. So like, I just need you to be prepared for the fact that this might continue to its natural conclusion. So there was one time when I think you ordered a purse.
A purse, yes.
You opened it up and you were like, oh, a Kate Spade purse. And then you said to me like, oh, I bought it for you. I started asking questions. I was like, why would you buy me a purse for no reason? And you're like, it's on sale. And I was like, you're not someone who just buys people like random gifts for no reason. That's not really your love language. And at the time I was just like, Brie, like you bought this for yourself. And you're like, no. And I was like, you bought
it was really the first time you kind of put your foot down and were just like, no, you need to admit that you did this.
And like you did.
And I was real scared. And you were like, okay.
I kind of was just mad that you lied to me about it. Because it was just like, why?
Don't you trust me with this?
Yes. After the purse story, so after this, late fall 2019, I'm shooting the season of Empty Suitcase that we shot. We shot 8 episodes over 32 days with a 10-day break in the middle, which, if you know anything about television production, is like unrealistic. At the same time all this is happening, I am slowly losing my mind at work. I'm overworked, I'm exhausted. My health is starting to decline. And the reason why Empty Suitcase had like a break in the middle is because we had to book it around my Disney World vacation that I planned like a year ago. A year prior. We planned it, I like took a cab from like the 4th episode to Disney World.
And then I flew into Orlando and met you there.
I know,
and it was...
And the first 2 days were great.
Yes.
And then...
we hit a wall.
All of a sudden, like the chaos of the entire year and the fact that I'd sort of been able to compartmentalize what was happening with you, I was left with the fact that while I was in sort of denial about what you were going through, a lot had happened. There was one night where like, I think you had women's pajamas or something. And
a little sleep set.
And I was just like, just say you're a trans woman. You're like, I'm not.
You also weirdly accused me of taking it from you.
Well, because here's the thing. I just bought the exact same one from Target. And I was just like, why are you wearing my clothes?
We have a lot in common.
We just have, unbeknownst to each other, we just bought the exact same clothes and I didn't realize it. And I was not, I don't know, I wasn't like emotionally in a great place. I basically spent that entire trip at Disney World like in a panic attack. I snapped.
Including at your very favorite restaurant in the world.
I had to go to the emergency room in the middle of that trip because I had a panic attack at dinner, and then I tried to go back, and then I had a panic attack at dinner again. I kept having panic attacks in the parks. I couldn't leave the hotel room. I got back, and it got like a little better, and then I went on Empty Suitcase, and it went from being bad to being like dangerous.
Yeah, you were jeopardizing your health.
Yeah. So I think like that was sort of like the point where it was just like this little thing where like we're both kind of gaslighting ourselves.
It's not going to work.
It's not really working. What saved it was the pandemic. So,
This is the story.
Yeah, because all of a sudden we were like trapped together at home.
It was just us.
We were watching the pilot of Devs, and in the if you've seen Devs, in the pilot of Devs, for the first like 3/4 of the pilot, you follow this guy, this like male programmer. We watched like the first 3/4 of it, and I think we paused it for some reason. And I think like, I don't remember like what prompted this conversation we were having in the kitchen. I think we were drunk. And I think I said to you, like, you can just come out as trans. Like, please just, I think.
Please just do it.
So we cannot keep doing this thing where we're both just sort of in denial of what's happening.
And then I finally said the words like, I am a woman.
Yes. The thing is, I followed this advice because it seemed logical. It seemed respectful, it seemed logical, it seemed affirming. And the problem is that it seemed like all these great things for Brie and all these absolutely destructive things for me. But I didn't really think about that part. And I didn't think about how when you don't process with someone, you're choosing to grow in a separate direction.
As the pandemic is going on, as I am starting first social, then medical transition, as I am coming out to everyone after Kristen, I'm feeling this great sense of relief, this great sense of finally understanding who I am and finally belonging. But at the same time, I can kind of tell that Kristen is not all the way there with me.
Yeah, because I'm processing
completely separately. Like
I'm processing elsewhere. A lot of that was like pandemic saved. Well, because a lot of what saved our marriage is that like all of a sudden we got to spend all day with each other. It was really fun.
It was very fun.
It was just like, oh boy, like it was like we got to eat dinner together, and like you're just here, and I can bug you all day, and like it was like yay.
Yeah. Well, like I got you a little streaming rig so you could do Animal Crossing.
Yeah, and it was like, this is really fun. And then like kind of, I think we got into like October, November, December, and I was just like, I've been trapped in this house with a person who is undergoing a massive psychological and physical change, and I'm losing my bananas.
And I feel like I am not allowed to talk about it with them.
It isn't enough to process with other people when you're talking about what's going on in the context of your marriage. You have to talk in a constructive, respectful way with that person.
Yes. Eventually, you have to do that.
Eventually, you have to do it. You can't not do it.
Or you can just leave. That's also an option.
Which honestly, I don't know, should we talk about that? So you may notice that there are some Kitchen and Jorn videos that were not shot at our house. That's because I was not living at the house at the time. I sort of lost my mind again and then moved in with my friend Jackie for a little bit.
I think we both learned lessons that I think seem contradictory but are not. So I think what you learned from that experience is that you do need to process with me. You do need to talk about your feelings with me. You do need to have that communication with me. I learned that I need to do slightly less of that and find trans people and queer people to be in community with.
Yes, that actually was the issue, is that you were leaning 100% on me and I was leaning 0% on you.
me.
And so what happened was I needed to lean like 50% and then you needed to lean 50%.
Yeah.
Because actually the reason why we got back together is I had like a migraine. There's more to the story, but I'm not gonna go into it. I had a horrible migraine. I had to go to the hospital. You actually went with me to the hospital. And this happened actually on our 4th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
You held my hand in the emergency room at 3 in the morning on our wedding anniversary while I got a spinal tap in the emergency room.
But I got 2.
2 spinal taps because the first one failed. I think the second one failed.
The second one also failed.
This is actually a funny story because, like, I don't know if you've ever had a spinal tap before. I had never had one, so I didn't know what was involved in them. And I could hear them talking behind me saying, like, "Oh, should we use like the 4.5-inch needle or like the 6-inch needle?" And I was like, "What?" I said numbers like, "What are they talking about?"
And I was just like, those aren't real numbers. I was like, those numbers were referring to something else. Completely lying. Bald-faced lie. Because I could see the needles and they were a foot long if they were an inch. Kristen did not need to know that. And they should have known better than to use terms that Kristen could understand.
Anyway, I kind of was like, you know, who's the person who was in the ER with you holding your hand at 3 in the morning? After I got back, we got into couples therapy, which is something we should have done from the beginning, but we're not very smart. What do you want? Okay, we aren't brain geniuses. The first couples therapist we saw was like not very good. And then we saw a second couples therapist who was awesome. Who is the best therapist I've ever seen in my life. She's just so good. And she's like really, really, really good at holding space for both of us and for making sure that like everyone feels heard. It's hard to go to a couples therapist because again, the first one we went to didn't really understand like that it isn't about like solving problems. It's about the fact that we are processing a change together. We had to have hard conversations. Every time I had to talk about something difficult, I had to, you know, I would rehearse it. I would have a session with my therapist alone. We would talk through it. I would discuss it in a way that was like productive. I'd hold space for you while you reacted to it. We would, it was like, and vice versa. And so if you don't process together, like,
then you're not together.
There are some couples for whom it's like a frictionless transition. But like the truth is that it is common to feel like a sense of grief. And you're not grieving someone because like they've died, because they haven't died, they're alive.
They're more alive than they've ever been, frankly.
Exactly, but you are grieving a loss because you're grieving the loss of what your life used to be. I think it's okay to acknowledge that in a safe, constructive, productive way where you're not saying like, the reason why we're grieving this loss is because you stole something from me.
Yes.
Because that's not true.
And as the trans person, you kind of need to be able to hear that you need to be able to hear the first thing without assuming the second thing.
And there are little things that you grieve as well. Like, you know, our wedding photos, they're sort of a relic of a different time. One thing I think about that actually I do still feel sad about, there's a photo of me, you, and my grandmother where like you're sort of in boy mode that like, I love the photo, but like I can't really put it up anywhere because like it's you in boy mode and like that would be disrespectful to you.
Sure.
Like I did have to like process, because the thing about grief is that it's not necessarily this thing that you sort of wear forever. It is in a lot of ways a process that you have to go through in order to like grow. And so I did have to grieve the loss of our old life so that I could emotionally move on to the life we have now. Yeah, and anyway, that's kind of where we are right now. I don't know if we gave much advice.
If I can give one piece of advice, I would say that just remember that being in a relationship, much like being trans, is not a destination, it's a journey. You are changing, you are growing, you are learning, and in a relationship, you're just doing that together. And to be trans is to be on a journey, and to be in a relationship is to take that person with you.
What a gay thing to say! Oh no, don't kiss me.
What a thing to gay.
Don't kiss me, because then you get lipstick on my face. Mwah, a little air kiss. Anyway, let me know if I'm canceled. Just so you know though, if I am canceled, Brie doesn't get to have a house either, so think about that.
What will happen to little Betty?
What will happen to little Betty? She won't get a precious little bone for Christmas.
Her little heart will break.
So anyway, bye!
Bye,
Love you,
lovelies.
bye.